So this is just to recap the first section of biopsychology. So this is the spec. This is the stuff that you need to know. So first of all, you've got the nervous system, so the CNS and the PNS. These are the key terms for this section. Remember, you could be asked to define any of these key terms in the exam. So you've got the subdivisions of the nervous system, so the central and peripheral nervous systems. There's been a previous exam question where you've been asked to demonstrate the divisions of the nervous system. The central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, and this is what the central nervous system does. If you make sure you know a main function of the different areas of the nervous system, again, in case it comes up as a 2-mark exam question. You've got the areas of the brain, which we'll come to in a different presentation as well. The peripheral nervous system. So you've got sensory and motor neurons in this nervous system. Then you've got the somatic system there. Then you've got the autonomic. They are more likely to ask questions about the autonomic nervous system because it has the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions in it, and that's a popular topic of exam question for AQA. This is the SNS and its response to an emergency situation. These are some things that happen in the sympathetic division of the system, and these in the parasympathetic division. Again, this has been an exam question before where you've been asked to describe something from the sympathetic or parasympathetic divisions. Make sure you know, I would say 2 of these. This is an example of a type of question you might get. You need to know the different types of neurons, and you need to know about synapse. Again, here are your key terms. So you've got sensory, relay, and motor neurons. They look different. They have slightly different features to them. You need to be able to name the main features of a nerve. So the cell body, the dendrites, and the axon. You need to know what the dendrites and the cell body and the axon do. The myelin sheath is there. You've got a node of Ranvier in between on the axon as well. You might be asked to label a nerve. If you're asked to label one, it's normally a motor neuron that you're asked to label. That order, sensory, relay, motor, that is a relay arc. So that's the order in which you need to remember them. Sensory neurons carry nerve impulses from sensory receptors to the brain. This has been an exam question before where you asked about the direction of travel. So from receptors to the brain is a sensory neuron. It's just some more information about them. And on the right, that's what they look like. Relay neurons kind of send the messages in between. They allow nerves to communicate with each other. They are within the brain and the spinal cord. They're not on the outside. They're not in the peripheral nervous system. Motor neurons, and again, this is the one you're more likely to be asked to label. They form synapses. They release neurotransmitters. Information is received from the brain to the neuron. An action potential is an electrical charge. You need to know, you need to be able to name an action potential when you talk about synapse. When a neuron's resting, it's negatively charged. When it's activated, it becomes positively charged. That's how you get your action potential, and that's how you get your nerve impulse. When we talk about a nerve firing, that's what happens. Synapse. You can be asked about the structure or the process involved in synaptic transmission. If you can see it, the picture in the top right, if you can accurately draw that and annotate it and show an arrow with the direction of travel, that is usually enough to get full marks without having to write too much. But please make sure that you can describe what is at a synapse and what is happening at synapse. So you could be asked a question about structure or function of a synapse. This is what's happening. The most marks you'll get on a synapse question is 6, so that can be condensed down. Again, the drawing in the top right, if it's annotated and it has an arrow showing the direction of travel, that is fine. There's the drawing. Neurotransmitters can be excitatory or inhibitory. You can learn an example of an excitatory or an inhibitory one if you would like to, and that describes what they do. This describes their function in a synapse, so they make a nerve more or less likely to fire. Summation, please remember what summation is. It's quite a common term that's asked about in exams now. Here are some summary questions. The endocrine system is the other system, not your nervous system, so it's glands and hormones. Those are your key terms. You need to be able to name at least 2 endocrine glands in the system and name the hormone that the gland produces and the effect that that hormone has. Try to learn 2 that's not the adrenal gland and adrenaline. Here are some hormones. This is how the endocrine system works. The pituitary gland is the master gland. It's the one that regulates the endocrine system. The pituitary gland also releases its own hormone, so it can be named if you're asked for a gland and a hormone. So you've got the adrenal gland that produces adrenaline. You have cortisol produced in the adrenal cortex, and adrenaline is actually produced in the adrenal medulla. So adrenaline is produced from a different part of the adrenal gland than cortisol. This is worth reading. AQA can be quite specific when they're asking a question about the endocrine system. Fight or flight response. So this diagram demonstrates the processes in the fight or flight response. It involves parts of the brain, the amygdala and the hypothalamus. And adrenaline is used as well. It involves the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. This is the HPA axis, so it describes the actions within the fight or flight response. And again, this is what happens if your body's in a sympathetic state or a parasympathetic state. It's just a different diagram of the HPA axis. It's just a shorter. In terms of acute stress, so one-off stress is the flowchart on the left. Chronic stress is the flowchart on the right. Some evaluation of fight or flight. Fight or flight is a good example of gender bias. So you can link the issue and debate of gender bias here and talk about women and tend and befriend. You can also talk about negative consequences of fight or flight if you're evaluating the fight or flight response. Fight or flight is also reductionist, so you can talk about biological reductionism here as well. Some exam questions.